What's your best but wait, it gets worse story? Story 1. Oh goodness, I don't even know where to start with this, but here goes nothing. Last December 26th, my phone rang early in the morning. My dad passed away unexpectedly in the night sometime. One day after Christmas and the day before his birthday. I try to help my mom get through all the legal paperwork and things that come after a spouse dies. Made sure she had groceries and company multiple times a week. I lived in a different town from my mom, so I was traveling a lot between towns. 6 weeks after my father passed, my mom fell ill. I brought her to the hospital early one Wednesday morning and had her flown out to a bigger hospital later that afternoon. She passed away that Saturday. Apparently, she had an aggressive form of cancer, and any symptoms she must have been feeling we attributed to grief. But wait, there's more. The night of my mom's funeral, which I planned and made arrangements for, my horrible sister gets wasted and goes bananas, keeping me up all night when I was already physically and emotionally exhausted. The few days that her and her husband were in town, they basically just took what they wanted and accused me of stealing things. Not to my face, but to family friends. I was left to clear, clean, and get the house ready for sale by myself. My mother had so many things from deceased family members that she hadn't had time to go through, sort, and donate yet, so I did by myself. But wait, there's more. 6 weeks after my mother passed away, while I was working on her house, I miscarried. In the last few weeks, I have found out that I have fibroids and potential cancer in my uterus/cervix, so I have a whole other path of uncertainty to walk down in the coming months. As far as I'm concerned, 2020 can hurry up and get the hell over already. Monday the 3rd, I know no one will see this, but my dear grandma passed away around 3 this morning. I just can't believe this keeps happening. Story 2. A month ago, we thought my dad had COVID as he was quite flu-ish. Vomiting, etc. Test comes back no, he doesn't have it, but still sick. A few days later, the day after my brother's birthday, he dies on his bedroom floor of a massive heart attack. We're all in shock. Then my brother starts getting heart pains, probably from stress or anxiety, but insists on getting an EKG. Feels like he's going to pass out all the time. Probably fine, but still stressful. 3 weeks to the day after my father died, I got a phone call that my mother cannot breathe, almost fainted on the stairs, and needed me to take her to the ER. I'm convinced she has COVID. She didn't. She's there till 3 a.m., needing 2 blood transfusions because her iron levels are insanely low. The day after that, after we've taken her home and started working on a nutrition plan, the dog gets bit by something, starts limping and drooling, and we have to rush him to the vet to make sure he's not having an allergic reaction. He's fine now, so hooray. Been a rough month, guys. Story 3. Friends of mine were getting married. They were planning a huge fancy wedding in the major city where they lived. They both had large families and many friends. About a month before the wedding, the groom's mother has a massive heart attack. Miraculously, she somehow survives, but it seems unlikely she'll be able to attend the wedding because it was being held about 1,000 miles away from mom's home. However, she continues to improve, and her doctor determines that she will be healthy enough to travel to the wedding by car. So the groom's parents start heading out about 3 days before the wedding so they can take the trip slowly and get to the major city the day before the wedding. Mom's tired, but doing knock. She decides to skip out on the rehearsal dinner so that she can conserve her energy for the wedding and reception. Mom wakes up the next day, gets dressed, gets her hair and nails done, looks gorgeous. Her husband drives her to the church and gets her settled in the front pew. The wedding is to start in about 15 minutes. Just as the bride is getting ready to walk down the aisle, Mom collapses in the church. An ambulance is called. Groom helps get Mom into the ambulance. Dad goes with Mom to the hospital with the groom's blessing. Wedding goes on as scheduled about 30 minutes after the initial start time because there are 2 other weddings scheduled at the church that particular day. Wedding ceremony is beautiful. Then there was a gorgeous reception nearby just afterward. Reception is beautiful, and then there was an after party that evening. Also a ton of fun. We find out the next day that the groom's mother had passed in the church and was dead by the time the ambulance arrived. They made a show of trying to revive her, but she was gone. The groom knew this but didn't want to ruin his bride's wedding day, so though he had just watched his mother die, He plastered a smile on his face and got through the day. He just told the bride they were taking his mom to the hospital to stabilize her. He didn't tell her what actually happened until the next day. The whole thing was so crazy, but despite all of it, they're still married 25 years later and have 3 gorgeous kids, so while the wedding was kind of a disaster, the marriage most definitely worked. Story 4. An acquaintance got married in an extravagant $80,000 ceremony, that's $57,000 in freedom dollars, and broke up on their honeymoon. But wait, it gets worse. They split because the groom was cheating on the bride with a string of one-night stands. Meanwhile, the bride was having an ongoing affair with the best man. But wait, it gets worse. They pretended to stay married for 6 months after out of shame, but it all came tumbling down when he made a huge Facebook rant calling her a whore and tagging all their friends and family in it with the most dramatic shitstorm of a comments section known to humanity. But wait, it gets worse. The bride and the best man decided they wanted to have a baby, and she immediately ran off with him and got knocked up. Story 5. This happened about 10 years ago. My boyfriend called me in the morning and dumped me over the phone. I was really upset and forgot to finish the laundry I'd started, so I had to go into work out of dress code. Of course, that would be the day our district manager was visiting, and I got written up on the spot even though it was the first time I'd ever been out of dress code. Spent my break crying because the universe was just taking a dump on me. But wait, it gets worse. When I got home that evening, I had a notice of eviction taped to my door because we had apparently been illegally subletting the apartment and had no clue. Didn't even cry because at that point it was just yup. That seems about right for today. Story 6. I work in an office. The building is owned by my boss, who is too cheap to shell out for actual maintenance service and has employees do handy work around the clock. One day, it started to snow. The snow was sticking to the sidewalk and showed no signs of letting up, so of course me and my coworkers had to go out and clean it. So while my boss sat in his nice cushy office, we started shoveling. One of my coworkers, let's call him X, is relatively new and having grown up in an apartment complex, has never shoveled before. Well, maybe that contributed to what happened next. He starts pushing the shovel in front of him at a crotch level. And eventually, the shovel head gets stuck on a raised brick, and it pushes the handle end of the shovel into X's crotch. There was no shovel handle because he had been given a broken shovel with a rusted end. Castration being imminent, X proceeds to tuck and roll off the sidewalk and into oncoming traffic. Fortunately for X, somebody grabbed him and pulled him back to safety. Boss drove him to the emergency room and paid for the resulting tetanus shot and 14 stitches on the inner thigh. Needless to say, he was not allowed to shovel again. Story 7. My grandmother died on Thanksgiving Day in front of the whole family. My grandmother had gotten diagnosed with brain cancer about 6 months prior, and knowing that she was in hospice care, much of the family decided to come visit for one last Thanksgiving, even though she was unconscious in the next room. The entire day, the cooking was going on despite Grandma's condition, and teenage me spent many hours salivating over a whole roasted pig being barbecued outside in place of a turkey. I was pretty stoked. Just as the sizzling pig is being taken off the barbecue, the hospice nurse sticks her head outside and announces that it's time. My grandmother at this exact moment is passing away. We all go inside, gather around the bed, and for 45 minutes or so, I watch as my grandmother gasps for air, twitches, and dies. It was a little traumatic. For some reason after that, we decide we are going to still sit down and eat dinner. I'm watching the barbecue pig be chopped up, and as I'm thinking I can probably still get myself to eat some of it, they douse it all in vinegar and chili flakes, ruining it. So as I tried to choke down this enormous disappointment, after watching my grandmother die, the morticians come and wheel her body out through the living room, and at that point, I was pretty much done. Story 8. In April 2017, on my birthday, my family came over for dinner and cake. It was my sister, her husband, my niece, my parents, my brother, his then fiancée, now wife, and my girlfriend. So we're having a nice time, eating hoagies, subs for those not from Philly, and my newly 2-year-old niece decided to jump on the couch. While my sister headed over to stop her, my niece slipped and with a loud bang hit her head on the coffee table. My sister yelped and quickly scooped up her daughter. My niece was crying and my sister was trying to calm her. Everything was quiet for a moment. Then my sister screamed. She rushed into the kitchen and I looked at my niece's head. There was blood. A lot of blood. We spin into a panic as my sister is hyperventilating. I quickly soak up the blood with a paper towel and notice only a very tiny cut. She didn't even need stitches. My father grabbed some ice and a rag and put pressure on the cut. My brother-in-law took my sister and niece to the hospital as the rest of us cleaned up a bit before heading over. So as we're cleaning, my then 14-year-old deaf Cocker Spaniel decided he wanted a hoagie. I glance over to the table, only to see his face slowly reaching for one. We'd all notice and run over to stop him. But that hoagie was no more, only scraps remained. So as we were cleaning said scraps, my dog walks back into the kitchen, looks at us, and shits on the floor. What the fuck? Story 9. I think probably the worst week of my life was getting my wisdom teeth out. I mean, I'll take my parents' divorce over doing that shit again. I got my teeth out, and I woke up to being yanked out of my chair by the dentist to go to the recovery room. I immediately started crying because I didn't know what was going on. Once there, I had to ask them to go get my mom 3 times because I was calling in and out of sleep, and I didn't understand what the nurse was saying. I get home and my mouth doesn't hurt that bad, but I'm still high AF and can't swallow because my spit was all bloody and gross. So I literally just cried and drooled on my mom till I passed out again. I'm 21, not a great look. I woke up and everything was fine for the first 2 days, but it became abundantly clear that I was allergic to whatever antibiotics they had me on. I threw up for 6 days, and the dentist wouldn't take me seriously until I started throwing up blood. I couldn't eat solid food, and I have a permanent aversion to chocolate ice cream now, fine going down, not great coming up. When he finally asked me to come in so he could check me out, there was a huge snowstorm, and we were stranded for 2 days. Then I missed an exam because I couldn't do anything without vomiting, and had to get a doctor's note from the dentist, which was a whole other ordeal. The only good thing that happened was I lost like 10 pounds, which I immediately gained back because 4 weeks later COVID hit. Now I've got these crazy scars in the back of my mouth that I don't think healed properly, and I haven't been able to go back to the dentist because COVID. Note to anyone getting their teeth out, the actual process and recovery isn't that bad. Just make sure you're not allergic to the medicine they give you. Story 10. I went on holiday with my parents to Ireland a few years back, and one of the days of the trip was one of the worst days of my life. The trip as a whole was fantastic, but this one day just sucked. My parents had booked all the hotels through a travel agency, and the night that we were in Cork, we were booked to stay in this spa resort because we got a good deal or something. At first, when we pulled up, it looked super fancy, like a typical resort. But then we find out then we're not actually staying in the main building, and they bring us out to these little cottages. Okay, fine. But then we get in, and the entire place smells like sewer, and there's a million stains everywhere. We're like, whatever at first, we're not that picky, and it's only a night. The next morning I wake up to find out that my period has started, so that's already a bad start to a day. Then I find out that the shower doesn't work, and we all have to take baths. My parents go first, and then it's my turn, and we run out of hot water, so I have to take a bath in a puddle from what's left in cold water. But wait, it gets worse. We then decide that we're gonna buy tickets for one of those hop-on, hop-off tour buses. We buy the tickets and we get on the bus, and it's good at first. We're seeing the sights, it's pretty whatever. But then the bus suddenly gets on the freaking highway, and we're sitting on the open top as branches are whizzing by over our heads fast enough that it could decapitate you if we weren't ducking. We find out from the other passengers that this tour bus wasn't a tour bus, but instead a bus taking people back to their cruise ship 40 minutes away. So we have to sit on the open top of a double-decker bus on the highway with branches almost hitting us for 40 minutes. Well, I'm terrified that I'm gonna leak through my pants because I'm on my period. We eventually get to the cruise ship, and we find out there's a train station nearby. So we went to the train station to get a train back to Cork, but the last one just left. So we had to wait an hour or so until the next one came. Don't really remember what happened after that. It's funny now to look back on, but I was pissed when it was happening. Moral of the story is to not let travel agents book your hotels and to double check the bus you're getting on. I highly recommend Ireland though. It is a beautiful place.